overview of the topic today.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. You all just heard a little notification come up on your computer that there is a recording in progress. This recording will only be capturing the opening part of the session where we go through the equity indicators and talk and hear our storytellers' experiences. And so I don't want anyone to worry about their opinions or anything coming out after the breakout groups that we're having later today. We just want to make sure that this information is accessible to as many folks as possible. Hello, everyone. You'll hear a little bit more about us later, but my name is Vince Pagan and I work with Morton Group LLC. And I just want to give you some pointers about working with Zoom today for the session. First, we're going to be limiting folks' microphone and camera access for the opening part of the session. It's really, the opening part is the most informational part. You're going to hear us talking about equity indicators. You're going to hear us talking about what brought Bozeman to this point and where we're going next. And you're of course going to hear from our three amazing storytellers a little bit later. And so the chat function is open and available to folks to send messages to the entire group or to co-hosts. If you have any question or technological issue that comes up, we'll receive those on the back end. Next up is closed captioning and transcription. Right after during today's session, I should say, we're offering transcription and we'll be dropping that link in the chat momentarily so that you all can take a look at that. Alternatively, you can go down to the bottom of your screen and make sure to click live transcript and you'll be able to see closed captioning come up. If you identified as a person that needs closed captioning in your registration survey, you'll be placed into a breakout room later today that will have closed captioning as well. And so you'll be able to access that during that session as well. Unfortunately, the other breakout groups will not have closed captioning. Finally, we are very fortunate today to be getting live interpretation services from our friend Yolanda, who is going to be offering Spanish interpretation for today's session. There are folks over at Montana Language Services that are joining us today, but if anyone else is interested in interpretation services, make sure that you click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. If you're bilingual, you can leave that off and hear both. If you are an English speaker, you can just hear the English translation there. And if you're a Spanish speaker, you can select Spanish down at the bottom of that list, and you'll be able to access Yolanda's translation. So if you have any questions about tech or are having issues or have any questions about using Zoom functions today, please feel free to send me a private message over on your chat box and I'll be happy to help you as I can. Thanks very much, and I will pass it back over to Danny to start our introductions.
Awesome, thanks, Vince. All right, so Vince mentioned a little bit about where we're headed this afternoon. But we'll start here with introductions, a welcome, and then a land acknowledgement. Then we'll move on to some group agreements to just set expectations about how we all will contribute to the conversations later this afternoon in those breakout discussions. And then as well as the chat boxes where those group agreements apply. And then we'll talk about the purpose of today's event. From there, we'll dive into the equity indicators to learn about the data behind the work that the city and partners are doing. And then we'll hear some connections from this data to personal experiences here in Bozeman from a panel of three wonderful storytellers. From there, we'll take a break, a short 5-minute break around 4:30, and then we'll dive into facilitated breakout conversations to reflect on the data, the stories, and talk about how we can work together to move this work forward. After that, we'll do a report out from each of those breakout conversations. Again, talk about making commitments to action in advancing equity in Bozeman, and then we'll close out at 6 p.m. So let's start with some introductions. My name is Danny Hess, and I am the Neighborhoods Program Coordinator here at the City of Bozeman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll pass it over to my teammates. Jeff?
Thank you, Danny. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff Mihalik. He, him, his. I'm the city manager of the City of Bozeman. Now I'll turn it over to Melody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melody Malure, the Communications Coordinator for the City of Bozeman, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I will pass it over to Ariel.
Hello, everyone. Ariel Donahue, she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Montana State University. PJ?
Happy Monday, folks. My name is PJ Diamond. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I direct the Diversity and Inclusion Student Commons here at Montana State University. I'll pass it on over to Judith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Judith Heilman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the Executive Director of the Montana Racial Equity Project. I'm going to turn it over to Kaylee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaylee Mency. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Deputy Director at the Montana Racial Equity Project, and I will pass it over to Michaela.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michaela Cox. I use the pronoun she, her, and hers, and I work for the Montana Racial Equity Project, and I will pass it over to Chrissy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Young-Greer. I am the Education Reform Lead for the Montana Racial Equity Project, and my pronouns are she, her.
And our folks from Bozeman Health.
Right. My name's Edie Woolley, and I use the pronouns she, her, and I am the Chief People Officer here at Bozeman Health, and I'm going to pass it over to Marilyn.
Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn King. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Deputy Superintendent Instruction for the Bozeman Public Schools.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Morton. I'm the president and founder of Morton Group, and we've been pleased to support the planning of this roundtable, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm going to pass it to Vince.
Again, everyone, as I said, my name is Vince Pagan, and I'm a project director with Morton Group. I'll pass it back over to Danny to keep our program going.
Awesome. Thanks, team. All right, so we are going to move into a land acknowledgement here. Oops, and we'll have Jeff deliver that.
Thank you, Danny. As we prepare to discuss how we can collectively advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Bozeman area, it's really important that we reflect on the layered history of the land we are on as we set our intentions for being here this afternoon. We acknowledge and honor with respect the Indigenous nations on whose traditional homelands the city now stands, and whose historical cultural relationships with the land continue to this day. In acknowledging these peoples and their lands and waters, it is important to recognize that our ability to live and work here is due to past and present colonizing policies, practices of genocide, cultural erasure, and the enslavement of Black people. This acknowledgement aligns with the principles and actions we hope to encourage through this community roundtable, as this practice models honesty, cultural humility, accountability, and acknowledgement of past and current inequities. We recognize that meaningful reconciliation efforts with Indigenous peoples have not occurred in this country, and we encourage a growing awareness of our individual and shared abilities to effect changes that will lead us to a more equitable future for all in our community. Thank you. Mary?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. And now we want to review our group agreements. These are the agreements that we will use to guide our conversation over the next several hours. So first of all, to be present, right? Just to be in this space, we want it to be an interactive space. And we want to make sure that we have an opportunity when we go to the breakout groups to hear from you. These group agreements will apply there as well. And so something that's also important is to keep in mind is to take space and make space. Meaning if you're someone who often talks and feels very comfortable in groups doing that, that you consider someone who may not, and that you leave some space for them to participate as well. Next, we want to ask you to be brave, right? We often talk about safe space, which is important, but safe space would mean that you might not ask questions. You might not participate. And so we want you to be brave and to share your experiences around equity. And we know that those conversations can be difficult. So we are going to do our best to support an environment that is welcoming and inclusive. We want you to be open. Open yourself to new ideas, to new experiences in your engagement with other participants, and to approach these conversations from a place of curiosity, right? If you notice that you're having a reaction to something that's being said, you might extend some wonder and think about, why am I having such a strong reaction? I wonder what conditions might have created a particular situation for this person who's speaking about their own experiences. We want you to be you, be yourself, speak from your own experiences, and whenever possible, use I statements. That will be very important. And of course, our last one here is the Vegas rule. So we want to ask that everyone really agree to maintain confidentiality, leave the names and the personal stories here, but take the learning with you. That's very, very important. It is our expectation and the expectation of the facilitators who will be in your breakout groups that everyone who's on this Zoom call will adhere to these group agreements. If for some reason you cannot adhere to these group agreements, we will likely have you removed from the meeting, and it won't necessarily be announced. We really want everyone to be included and to feel welcomed here. And that means that if for some reason there's a veering off of the not the message, but the discussion points that will be about the equity indicators only. It's really important to keep that in mind. If you have some other ideas, there will be an opportunity for you to leave those at the end of this session today. However, we want to stay on track. And if for some reason the facilitators feel that you're moving off track, they will gently but firmly bring you back to where we need to be so that we can have as many people as possible share in the breakout groups. If for some reason you don't feel that you can do that, please let us know now, and we will understand if you need to excuse yourself. However, for all of you who do believe that you can agree with these guidelines, we would love to see a thumbs up and or your reaction button right now. So if everyone could give a thumbs up or a reaction button thumbs up, we would greatly appreciate it. Just gonna wait for a moment here. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm gonna turn it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mary. So for those of you who are new to this conversation with us, you might be asking, what is this all about? Well, the mission and the purpose is really simple. That the City of Bozeman is committed to efforts to ensure simply this, that all residents, visitors, and City of Bozeman employees feel welcome, valued, and can thrive in our community no matter their race, identity, or life circumstance. You know, we've started to work towards this goal by investing in training for leadership, for city staff, for law enforcement. We've been changing our police policies, and we've been looking at our hiring and recruitment policies for the City of Bozeman. We've really prioritized the development of a diversity, equity, inclusion plan in the coming year, and we want you to invite others to participate with us to engage in that process. Danny?
So what we want to get started with today is to share out about what we heard from people and what we learned in the data through the Equity Indicators project that the city undertook earlier this year. So what that project was all about was providing a baseline understanding of the gaps in our community and set sort of a roadmap that we'll follow to close those gaps. PJ? Another purpose of today's event is to listen to the stories around people's lived experiences. So you'll hear from our storytellers down the road, and that will really help us bring some of these indicators, some of this data to life. And
Hey, Danny. Hey, Danny, I'm back. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. It wouldn't let me unmute. But so as Danny was saying in that first step of understanding the data, not only do we want to understand the data, but we also want to understand the real people and their stories that live within this data that we will present you all with today. Oftentimes, the numbers or the statistics don't do the stories justice, or they don't fully represent our lived experiences. So today we are creating a unique space so that we can explore the stories and the diverse identities that are found within our community and within this data. I'll go ahead and pass it to Kaylee.
Great. And it's going to take all of us. What can we do personally and professionally to help make our city, county, and state a more welcoming place for everyone? Edie?
We are so glad you're here to learn, listen, and join the conversation. And I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Edie. Now we'll dive right into the data. And some of you might be wondering, why are we starting out with the numbers? Well, because it's important that we begin the conversation from the same understanding of the gaps in our community. First off, let's talk about a few definitions. What is equity? For the city's efforts, equity means that all people can thrive, no matter their race, identity, or life circumstance. It means that people are not limited in getting what they need to live a healthy, productive life by things like the color of their skin, their gender identity, or their physical or cognitive ability. Danny?
So next in our list of definitions here, what is an equity indicator? An equity indicator is just a specific measurement that shows the different experiences or variation of experiences of people with a given identity or characteristic. So what we mean when we say identity or characteristic are, again, race, ethnicity, gender identity, ability, socioeconomic status.
So what is a gaps analysis? Essentially, a gaps analysis looks at which services and resources are available or missing in our community. And along with that, identifies what barriers people might be facing in accessing those resources or services. This part of the project that you'll hear us talk about captured information from services provided by the city and by the many, many other organizations throughout our community in areas like health, housing, education, and so on.
So how do we develop the indicators, you might be wondering? Well, developing the indicators started with conversations and interviews, focus groups, and through 1,500 survey responses from organizations providing vital services in our community, as well as with people accessing those services. We wanted to measure the things that mattered most to our community. The data that came out of this project comes from the census, as well as through data sharing agreements with local organizations. We're really excited to publish these indicators on a public-facing dashboard really soon. These indicators help us to be transparent, accountable, and data-driven as the city and hopefully partner organizations work to improve equity in our community. Melody.
So if you got a chance to review the equity indicators report ahead of time, you'll have noticed that there were 8 key priority needs areas identified. And as we walk you through this presentation, you'll get a snapshot of some examples of equity indicators that fall within these 8 categories. And they are housing, economic opportunity, health, education, childcare and youth programming, transportation, justice and civic health, and quality of place. Jeff?
Thanks, Danny. So let's jump right into one indicator that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, and that's housing. The need for affordable housing was identified by 70% of those who participated in the community survey. This remained consistent when disaggregating by all demographics, whether that's race, gender, or ability. Renters whose income is below $35,000 a year are 3 times as likely, that's right, 3 times as likely as homeowners to be housing cost burdened. An individual is housing cost burdened if they are paying more than 30% of their total annual income towards housing. Housing cost burden is felt most severely by those with lower incomes and those who rent, more so than those with higher incomes or those who own their homes. Danny?
Thanks, Jeff. So really closely related to the housing cost burden equity indicator is household income by race. And so you'll see here the median income, average median income in Bozeman over the last 12 months is $55,500, right around there. So when we disaggregate this data, or when we separate the data based on race, we see that only two groups make above that $55,500 average median income: white and Asian folks in Bozeman, who make almost twice that average median income. All of the other racial groups are making below that median income. So Hispanic and Latinos, we can see, are at the lowest, making about $34,000 a year for a household. When we're thinking about who's struggling in our community, folks who are really trying to make ends meet, paying their rent, paying their mortgage, trying to keep the heat on and keep their kids in school or daycare, this indicator shows that those struggles aren't felt in the same way by families across demographics. So if we think back to Jeff's slide on housing cost burden, we can consider that the average income for Hispanic and Latino families in Bozeman, those families are much more likely to experience that housing cost burden than other families in Bozeman. More than just housing though, household income determines in a big way your ability to stay healthy and live the quality of life that you want to live, take the time to engage in local issues, and stay connected to community. So I'll turn it over to Melody.
Danny teed it up really well. We're zoning in now on health. And so one equity indicator we're going to point out here is around mental health. We found through this project that cis women, or women whose gender identity, expression, or behavior is the same as those associated with their assigned sex at birth, reported a large need for access to mental health services at a higher rate than compared to other genders. Nearly 3/4 of cis women, about 75%, believe that access to mental health services in Bozeman was a large need. Similarly, all respondents whose gender was not listed reported a large need. Cis men, trans women, and non-binary respondents also reported a large need for access to mental health services at a similar rate of around 40 to 46%. When we're talking about mental health, some people also express the impacts that the state of Montana, have on their well-being, especially for LGBTQ+ community members. I'm going to share a quote from one of our community members as a part of the project, and they shared, quote, "The legislation has been really rough. The anti-trans bill. For those that identify as a sexual minority, it's been hard. A lot of people are struggling with what's happening at the state level." And I'm going to continue on here and touch on another aspect of health, which is access to healthcare. So the 2020 Community Health Needs Assessment found that communities of color are much less likely to get routine checkups than white residents. And while they don't report access difficulties to a significantly greater degree, they are significantly more likely to be without health insurance coverage. LGBTQ residents are also more likely to report difficulties accessing healthcare and are more likely to be without insurance coverage. And I'll turn it over to Kaylee.
Thank you so much, Melody. And now we're going to shift gears to talk about the education indicators briefly. So data from K-12 education is really important to consider in understanding the gaps in achievement based on identity, background, and life circumstance. And one participant shared specifically that, quote, "We all want our students and children to be successful. We want our children to have it better than we did." And the education indicators shows that students experiencing homelessness, students learning English, and students with a disability are less likely to graduate from their high school than their peers. And students who experienced homelessness in the 2019 to 2020 cohort had a graduation rate of just 55%, whereas 88.6% of students who were not homeless graduated. The importance of housing is shown here again, and when comparing all the graduation rate demographics, housing security and whether a student experienced homelessness had the largest impact on graduation rates. Danny?
Thanks, Kaylee. Okay, so transportation is our next indicator. So right off the bat here, we saw that survey across all demographics of survey respondents, people with disabilities reported the highest level of need for transportation to and from work. So thinking about accessibility of our transportation system means designing streets, sidewalks, bike routes, and bus stops in a way that's safe and accessible for everyone. Accessibility not only includes these physical design elements, things like bus shelters, curb ramps, audible pedestrian crossings for people who are blind or low vision, but accessibility also means language access for Spanish speakers or folks who speak other languages in our community. So we heard in this survey, we heard from respondents that translating information about public transportation specifically into Spanish would help support and invite Spanish speakers in our community to take advantage of Streamline, our public transportation option. So through multilingual signage and personalized public transit tutorials, Streamline has really recognized this need to create customized solutions to meet the needs of different transit riders in our community. And I will continue on here to childcare, which is another indicator that we heard a lot about in the community engagement phase of the Equity Indicators Project. So we've got a lot of numbers on this slide, bear with me, but the average cost of childcare in Gallatin County for a family of one adult and two kids, so a single parent and two kids, is over $17,000. $17,500 is that average childcare cost per year. So while there are some affordable childcare options in Bozeman, not all families qualify for that support. Eligibility requirements means that those making above $28,500 don't qualify for affordable childcare options. So again, if we go back to that example of a single parent with two kids, if they make above $28,500, they don't qualify for some of these affordable childcare options that are available in our community. So that's about 57% or over half of families whose income is below $44,000 that wouldn't be eligible for these affordable childcare programs. So there's this gap of families who make between $28,500 and $44,000 who are really on the hook for paying that childcare cost of over $17,000 a year. And one outcome that has is that these families face way bigger barriers when it comes to participating in discussions like this or other policy discussions in the community about decisions that affect them. So I'll pass it over to Judith now.
Thank you, Danny. So now we're going to switch it over talking about justice and civic health. Justice and civic health indicators highlight the importance of creating transparency and engagement around public safety policies and decision-making processes. Participants recommended that Bozeman organizations and public institutions have boards and commissions that reflect the demographic makeup of the broader community. This also goes for staff. That means ensuring inclusivity and support for staff within the organization, and then working towards recruiting and hiring policies that welcome, support, and retain a more diverse staff. Currently, people of color are underrepresented on city advisory boards. The city also collected voluntary demographic data on gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, and whether board members are renters or homeowners. Melody, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Judith. So quality of place indicators really speak to how city and local organizations can make our public spaces and our built environment, the environment around us, more inclusive by how they're designed. These are recommended indicators that touch on the ways in which public spaces like our parks, paths, public buildings can be inclusive and accessible for all people across our community, whether that's through ADA accessibility or universal design features that don't exclude people based on their bodies. Language access, like Danny mentioned earlier, is another important component, meaning that signage and wayfinding are accessible to people who speak other languages or who are blind or low vision. Now, these data points are not currently being tracked. However, it's important to note how important they are in terms of considerations for planning for new or improved public spaces. So Danny, why don't you take us out here?
Hey, everybody, you made it through the data. So now that we've covered the ins and outs of these equity indicators, again, like Melody mentioned, these are just examples of a whole set of recommended indicators that was developed through that project that I mentioned earlier. But really, why does this matter? Why do the numbers matter? First off, it's about transparency. Again, it's about setting that baseline that we all are aware of and we all understand is sort of where we're starting this work from. And then it's about accountability. So how can we start from the same baseline and then begin to work to close some of these gaps that we just talked about, measure that progress and share out about it. So now that we've prioritized these areas of work, how can we make sure that we're communicating regularly our progress towards addressing it? But really, it's about more than numbers. It's about the folks in our community who are experiencing our community differently based on who they are. It's about our friends, it's about our family, it's about our colleagues and neighbors. So now I'm going to transition us over into the storytelling component of our time together this evening.
So it is my great honor. I am very excited to share some time with our group tonight with three amazing people who have offered to bring their voices to this conversation on belonging in Bozeman. Our planning team identified these folks as people who can speak truth to their experiences here in Bozeman, highlight how each of our uniqueness contributes to improving our community for all in big and small ways every day. So I'm going to tell you a little about each of our three storytellers, and then I'm going to open the space up to them and you'll just get to hear from them. So our first storyteller will be Shamara. She has been living in Bozeman since 2016 and attending MSU. She is currently on the board for the Montana Racial Equity Project. Then we will hear from Nnamdi Kanaga. He is born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, and is a multi-talented filmmaker, writer, and actor. Having worked in Nollywood for a while as an actor, he made a paradigm shift to the US in 2018 to pursue a graduate degree in English and his filmmaking career. In May of 2019, Nnamdi made his directorial debut with Talisman. The Hail Mary, Montana's first film with an all-Black lead cast, is his debut feature film and the second film as a director. Nnamdi hopes to help contribute and promote cultural and creative diversity through art and films in Montana state and beyond. Nnamdi also holds a strong belief that he will be the first Nigerian born and bred to win an Oscar. And then lastly, we will hear from Asia. She uses she, her pronouns. Asia is a nonprofit professional who strives to be radically human in all she does. She values equity, community, and love. This looks like showing up in spaces like this to support difficult conversations aimed at making this place better and more inclusive for everyone.
All right, so I'm just going to stop sharing here and turn the floor over to Shamara.
Hello. So my name is Shamara Hardiman. I believe it is a beautiful name and with a lot of history behind it, and it is very unique. I love my name. It carries a lot of the story of my life with it. But I didn't always love my name. It was once separated from me by my peers, and it painted me as the other, the unknown, and the strange. So I remember the culture shift vividly from when I moved from my predominantly Black hometown to a new town where I could count on the number of Black kids on one hand. This shift to the culture other could be tracked through the reception of my name. Suddenly, I was the only one with an ethnic name, and immediately teachers would struggle. Where my previous teachers would need to be corrected on pronunciation once or twice, it was now rare to have a teacher who was willing to put the effort in to know my name for the entire year I was with them. It was as if the acceptance of my name was tied to the acceptance of me and my culture. I was expected to accept whatever mispronunciation of my name the teachers found acceptable, as to not be seen as a burden to them. And as my name shifted away from me, so did my identity. I was expected to change who I was to be more appealing to those around me, just as my name was expected to adjust to whatever was more palatable. But that was never going to work. I couldn't live up to the standard of normal because I wasn't their normal. It was impossible for me to achieve. My name would never roll off their tongue, just as my existence would never blend into the background. With this new and confusing existence, I turned to art as an outlet. Art was a way to express myself and find who I was again. When 7th grade came around and I had a choice in my classes for the very first time, I was thrilled to see art as an elective. I signed up knowing that none of my friends were interested in the subject, and I would be taking it alone. On the first day of class, I hurried into the room and I chose the first spot I could. The tables were arranged in groups of 4, and soon 3 other seats were filled by a group of boys who I had seen in passing before, but never really talked to. Everyone was filled with first day jitters, and as we waited for class to begin, I saw the group of boys put their head together and whisper to one another. I couldn't be bothered with this though, because my own excitement, although something I heard, through my own excitement, I heard something, but I couldn't quite make out, but it tickled like the back of my brain, as if to warn me. As class began, the teacher informed us that the group that we were working with would be the one, would be the group for our entire year, and to introduce ourselves to the people at our table. I introduced myself to my new group, and I introduced myself with a name I was given, instead of the common mispronunciation that the teacher had used during their roll call. It is at that time that one of the boys snickered and greeted me, although the name he used wasn't the one I introduced myself with. It wasn't even one that the teacher used just minutes earlier. It was a name that, as soon as he said it, I recognized it in the whispers from earlier. He called me Shaniqua. Microaggressions are considered to be paper cuts that, when repeated over a lifetime, will leave someone torn to shreds. But this was not just a paper cut. It was a sucker punch. It was as if something inside me had died in that very moment. While him and his friends laughed as if it was some sort of joke to them, I was hit with the harsh reality that I was nothing more than a racist caricature to them. They saw me as nothing more than that Black girl with the funny name that, if you squint hard enough, can be exchanged with any other Black sounding name. I looked at my teacher and found no comfort in her eyes as she looked through me. I felt more alone than I ever had in that very moment. This continued the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that for the rest of the year. My teacher never did anything to help, or even move me to a different section despite asking. Somewhere in there, I stopped drawing in my free time. The one comfort I found had been stripped from me. I could no longer find myself in my art because every time I looked, I could only find the mockery staring back at me. It was as if there was nothing left in me to find anymore. That was the moment I stopped fighting. I stopped correcting teachers. I let people use nicknames when they decided that my name was just too much to learn because it was better than the alternative. I started to fully believe that my name was a burden and expecting anyone to learn it was simply just asking too much. I figured allowing my name and myself to simply disappear would always be better than having to confront that view of myself again. Being nothing was better than being something if that something was nothing more than a stereotype. This mindset had become deeply rooted inside of me. I trained myself to respond to anything that started with an S sound. I had teachers who attended I attended their class for 3 years, and never had they called me by my name. I used another name when ordering food in any situation that would involve someone needing to grab my attention, such as like Starbucks. I had to come to recognize this trend in others who have names that deviate from the norm. It's actually called the Starbucks name, and it relies on the person no longer finding themselves in their name. I graduated high school, and I had become so used to hearing my name, any other name than my own, that I can't recall if, during my graduation, the school even bothered to pronounce my name right as I crossed the stage. It wasn't until I enrolled in college and moved into the dorms with my first ever roommate, where I had to come to the terms with the effects of essentially forgetting my name. I moved in with my roommate and met a group of friends on our floor. I introduced myself to everyone, and my roommate mispronounced my name. I had already previously given her a written pronunciation of my name. I had become so numb to this that at this point I had found no reason to correct her. She called me the wrong name for far too long, until one day she was corrected by another friend months later. She was corrected by another friend with a similar unique name that had put in the effort to know my name because she understood. After my roommate was corrected, she was, understandably, as I've come to know, upset. She sat me down and told me that she wants to say my name correctly. She told me that I deserve to have a name used by others, and she was genuinely upset that I had not corrected her, and that I will allow myself to be nameless. At this moment, I realized that she was right. I deserve to have my name spoken properly. I deserve the same courtesy that is extended to my peers with less ethnic or unique names. Correcting people when they mispronounce my name is still difficult for me today. I am still unlearning all the behaviors I had intertwined with my existence for so long. But now I know that I deserve the same treatment as all the Katies and Ashleys and Hannahs of the world. I deserve to be treated as an individual with my own name, even if I have to correct someone 100 times. So thank you. That was my story.
Thank you so much, Shamara. We'll transition over to Nandi, who has offered the gift of his story for us this afternoon as well. So powerful, Shamara. You're getting some love and some reactions from the audience. We really appreciate you sharing with us.
Ooh, thank you so much, Shamara, for that story. I'm actually very emotional right now because I feel you. I hear you. I have a similar name. I mean, I've heard 5 million spellings and people have said my name in different ways. I know how painful that can be. And I'm just putting out anybody who says my name wrongly, I'm going to correct you. I might be rude to you, but that's it. You have to say my name rightly. All right, so to move to my own story, I was earlier introduced, my name is Nnamdi, 2 N's, Nnamdi Kanaga, and I'm from Nigeria. I'm a filmmaker based here in Bozeman, Montana, and I moved to the US in 2018 for my master's. And then my very first American experience is Montana, which when I tell anybody this story, everybody's like, what are you doing in Montana? What are you doing here? I found myself here. I got a scholarship to study film, and then I came here. I had no idea where Montana was. All I knew was I was coming to the US, and the only thing US that I knew prior to coming here was Los Angeles, LA, New York, and all of these beautiful places, you know. And in my mind, everywhere in America is like that. So when I came to Montana, on my very first day of going to school, I was like, where are the Black people? I've never felt so alone like I felt when I came to the US for the first time, and it was scary, but I mean, I came here for a purpose, and I'm glad I'm still here. And I'm going to still be here as long as I want to. But I do, based on what we're talking about here today, I have a story I want to share that could have been an impediment in my life and my career, but somehow it has become a source of inspiration and has become what has motivated me to do what I want to do and what I've always wanted to do. I'm a storyteller and I've always wanted to tell stories, my own story, not somebody else telling my stories or stories of my people, because for a long time, other people have told our stories. And I feel like it's time to take that bold step to tell our stories by ourselves. But at some point, before you get to that point where you can tell your own story, you have to be able to learn and just grow and get all the necessary things you need to get to be able to tell your own story. So when I came here from Nigeria, I started doing films in Nigeria. I was an actor, and when I came to Bozeman, I wanted to continue with that. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try to look for where I can get like auditions, see the filmmaking industry here, and try to enroll myself there and try to get used to the industry here and see if I can put myself out there and start from scratch. And so, as usual, when I'm done with school, when I came in 2018 for my scholarship, I had known about the film program at MSU, and so I knew about the VCB. I knew about everything that was going down. So I said, okay, when I have free time, I would go there and see if there were any auditions, something like that, so that I can put myself out there. So one particular day, I can never forget this day, was in October. October of 2018. I went down to the VCB. There was an audition going on there for a film, I think a student film. And so I went to audition for a part in the film. I walked into the VCB. I was, of course, the only Black person that I saw around there. And I didn't know, I didn't really feel anything, to be honest. Because just to add, probably before coming to the US, I had no idea what racism was like. I mean, I've heard about it from home, but I had no idea how intense it was or what it felt like to go through microaggressions or to be looked down upon based on your skin color. I had no idea what all those were until I came to the US. So it was my very first time. So I went to the VCB and I saw that I was the only Black person there. So at first I felt alone, of course, but I didn't really feel anyhow at that point in time. I just went there and I smiled to everybody as I always do. And I sat down there and I went in, I got the script from this guy. And he gives me the script and I read and he says, okay, I'll call you when I need you to read your part. I said, okay, cool. I went out there and I was reading my part. When I was called back in, I went back in and did my role, acted and everything. And this guy is like, oh my gosh, you did so well. I love your performance. You were really, really good. I'm going to get back to you, okay? And I said, okay, fine. I was so excited. My very first audition in America, I was so I can't even explain how happy I was that day. I was jumping. I even called my friends. Like, hey, I just did my first audition in America. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. Literally a few minutes after that audition, I got an email. The email is still in my phone right now. I refused to delete that email because it meant so much to me at that time. And the email read, you did so well. In fact, you were the best amongst everyone I auditioned. You've got the part. I was so happy. You have no idea how happy I was when I saw those lines. I was so excited. But I knew that the role was written, the way the role was written, of course, I knew it was written for a white person. So I felt good that I was considered and I got the part. But I still, in my mind, I still asked myself, how it was going to be. Would they change the role? I just felt, I knew that something was going to change in the script, but I was happy nonetheless that I got the part. Fast forward 2 weeks after, I never heard from this guy. He didn't call me, he didn't text me again. And I was like, okay, cool, maybe they gave it to somebody else. But I still felt happy that I was the best according to what he said in that audition. So that's why I kept that email till this very day. So a few days after, on the 18th of October, because I would never forget that date in my entire life, I was going down to the streamline to get a bus to the FGH. Then I saw that same guy walking towards me, and he saw me and he smiled. I'm like, oh, hi, how you doing? Hey. And the next thing he says, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't give you the part anymore. I had to give it to someone else because of your skin color. I was like, what? He said, yeah. And he was smiling. And the next thing was he touched my face like this and was laughing and he was smiling like he was making a joke. And then I asked, I had to think back. I was like, wait, did you just tell me that he didn't give me this part because of my skin color? I'm like, well, you told me that I was the best in this role. So what happened? I mean, you saw me, I did not come in wearing a white face. I came in with my blackness to the audition and you saw me act and you said I was the best. And then 2 weeks after you said you didn't give me because of my skin. It didn't really make any sense to me. But I felt so hurt because it was the first time in my entire life where somebody would deny me something because of my skin color. I'm from a country where everybody is black. So nobody can tell you you can't get this role because of your blackness. So it was the first time I was hearing that thing. It didn't make sense to me. I would never forget, I called my professor, Professor Nancy Conwell, an amazing professor who is like my mother. I told her and she was talking to me and I was crying. I cried so hard that day because it was the first time I was ever told that thing. I was denying the role because of my skin. I've never told anybody this story before except today. But I'm telling this story because I feel like we are in a space where everybody can be who they want to be. I mean, this guy has the right to give anybody he wants to give the role. I'm not entitled to any role. It's his film. But I mean, you could have denied me because you could have said, oh, you didn't get this part because I couldn't find someone to play your dad. I couldn't meet up with this, something else other than telling me point blank that I didn't give you this part because of your skin color. That was rude and it was unfair to me. And I felt so bad. I cried. I remember wanting to leave Bozeman so bad. I applied to so many schools to leave, but somehow I just found myself still stayed back there in Bozeman. But I mean, after that day, I decided to, I said to myself, I'm going to go back and I'm going to stay here. I'm going to tell my story. I'm not going to go for anybody's audition. I'm going to sit back and work hard and get my own film and cast my own people and tell my own story. And that was how I was able to come up with my film, The Hail Mary, which is an all-black film, all-black lead cast film, where only black people were in it. A few white people there as a supporting character, but the main roles were all black people. I had to fly people down from out of states just to make that film, to tell people that I can tell a story about black people in Montana. And it's my story, and it's written and directed by me, cast by me, because I felt hurt when somebody told me that I couldn't get a part because of my skin color. And so looking back now, even telling this story, even hearing from Shamara, and I feel like for me it was a push. It was something that made me become who I am today. And whatever I'm doing right now was happened because of that incident. It hurt me, pained me, but I did not let it weigh me down. It was what motivated me to continue to fight and push hard till this very day. And I feel like, many people I've spoken to said, oh, Montana is, demographics here is, white people. So we telling a story about black people, casting black people is not going to make sense. I'm like, well, yeah, but that excuse is really sad because if you keep on telling a story about one people, it doesn't make sense because if you look around you, there are lots of people here. And there's so many stories that can be told about other people. And after I made that film, people started asking me, oh my gosh, you have black actors here? I didn't know that. Oh my God. And they started reaching out and wanting to work with us and everything. But you wouldn't do that if you did not know, if you don't experience or hear people or reach out to people to want to hear their stories. And so I feel like from today, I want us to, give more chances to people to tell their stories, include people in whatever you're doing, because trust me, people want to be heard, people want to be seen, but they need a chance and an opportunity for them to be seen and heard. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Namdi. This is the downside